Hey guys, Tyrannosaur here again, bringing you the second video of mine highlighting PvE community events. This video is going to go over more competitive PvE events, so if you're aspiring to be the best PvEer you can on your faction, server, region, or in the world, this video is for you. If that doesn't sound like your cup of tea, then check out my other PvE community events on my channel. That video goes over more non-competitive, or at least less competitive, PvE events. Like I said in my other PvE video, I'm not advocating for more competitive or less competitive PvE events. I'm just trying to get as many of the ideas out there and talked about as possible. Also, I want to clarify that all of my ideas are for community-driven events. I don't want Blizzard scripting any of these into the game or providing any in-game incentives or rewards for participating. I think these events will be the most fun if it's the community putting them on, deciding the rules and objectives, and updating and changing things as needed. So, competitive PvE events. I'm going to start with raids since that's probably what most people think of when they think of PvE. Competitive PvE in vanilla is already going to be centered around server, region, and world first, so my ideas will ideally take place between content releases when there's a need to spice things up. So during the dead time when guilds are just clearing raids week after week with not much else going on, that's ideally when my events are going to be the most needed and also the most fun. I also know and understand that speed clearing is going to be a big thing. Guilds will compete for the fastest raid clear times. I'm sure that's going to come about all on its own, so I'm not going to really talk about or include that in this video because I just know it's going to show up no matter what. My main idea for raids is to have a monthly raid marathon competition. So by that I mean that once a month there's an organized competition for guilds to compete in to clear all the raids in one sitting the fastest. Depending on what content is out, this could mean the guilds just have to clear Onyxia and Molten Core, with time starting with the first poll and ending once all the bosses, so 10 out of 10 MC and 1 out of 1 Onyxia, have been killed. Once BWL comes out and gets added to the list, then things can get more interesting. You can start having an assigned order in which the raids have to be completed. So one month it could be BWL, MC, Onyxia, and then the next month it could be switched up. So you have to do Molten Core first, and then BWL, and then Onyxia, or have Onyxia be in the middle so that it requires guilds to do more world travel and things like that. And then obviously as ZG, AQ20, AQ40, and Max come out, it creates more and more content, and I think more opportunities for guilds to have slip-ups and for the marathon to get a lot more entertaining. I think you can throw other wrenches into the mix, such as limiting which world buffs you can use. You can also set a standard that each guild has to clear 2 full ZGs and 2 full AQ20s. So the 40-man raid has to split into 2 20-man groups, and each 20-man group has to finish their respective raid before the full raid can come back together and move on to the next instance. If any of this has inspired any ideas from you guys of things to add that would be interesting, let me know. These are just a few of the ideas that I've come up with. Hopefully the community is able to come up with more ways to make these marathons more interesting and more challenging. The non-raid ideas I have are for different dungeon events. I know that dungeons become less and less valuable as servers progress and guilds get farther into content, so I wanted to come up with some ideas to keep people running dungeons. The first and most basic is to create a dungeon speed clear leaderboard. This could just be a thread made on a server's forums that people post videos to show their dungeon clears. The thread could then be updated to show the top 3, 5, or 10 fastest clear times for each dungeon. Other than making it clear which bosses need to be killed for a run to count, this would be a pretty basic and easy one to get started. If people want to put a little more work into it, they could track the group composition and maybe have different categories for different group comps so that there's hopefully more diversity in which classes get brought. My second dungeon event idea is to have daily dungeon speed clear competitions. A dungeon could be tweeted out and people could submit videos of their clear times either on a forum or they could tweet them back to whoever did the initial tweet. There could be a separate leaderboard for these that tracks the players and or groups that have participated and how many of the daily dungeon challenges they have won. So that could be if one particular person is constantly doing them but with different groups, maybe you just track how many times that person has been a part of a group that has won the competition. But you could also have a separate category that is fixed groups that tracks how many times they've won the daily competition. With all of these dungeon ideas, I think there's room to add small tweaks to make things interesting. For instance, druid healers are probably the least ideal, since if anyone in the group dies, they only have a combat res. So maybe if you bring a druid as your healer, you would get to subtract X number of minutes from the clear time. You could do a similar thing in order to incentivize bringing less optimal classes and specs. Since it's dungeons and not raids, I think it's okay to create incentives and disincentives for certain classes and combos just to get more people involved. I think this could lead to showcasing how well certain off-specs or classes can perform, especially at high levels by skilled players. My last dungeon idea is similar to the raid idea, where either once or twice a month, several dungeons, I'm thinking 3 to 4 level 60 dungeons, could be selected and given an order, and then there's a challenge to speed clear those dungeons in the specified order. Again, you could make this more interesting by throwing in things like subtracting time for using less optimized groups and specs, and also setting different standards for maybe the order you do each dungeon itself in, or maybe which bosses you can and cannot skip, things like that. As always, let me know what you think about these ideas. I think there's a lot of room, especially with dungeons, to get creative and come up with competitions. So if you have any feedback on the ideas I went over, or if in watching this you thought of some completely different ideas, I would love any suggestions you have. As always, thanks for watching. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Duranosaur24 to get updates about these videos. And as I put more work into the ideas, I'll probably use Twitter to reach out to you, the community, to flush out the ideas and just get feedback.